Power a board full of pedals without looking for an outlet. The Joyo Power Supply 5 this week on Learning Curve. Hi, I'm Spencer Dobson. This week on Learning Curve, I'm looking at a rechargeable power supply that fits on your pedal board. It's the Joyo Power Supply 5. The 5 has 8 ports with multiple volt and milliamp settings. It has a status light that tells you how long you have left on the charge. It also has a USB port so you can plug your phone in. Of course, it has a port for you to plug it in to recharge it. They say it's capable of doing up to 10 hours with analog pedals. 2 hours if you're using pedals that require a lot of juice. According to the literature for the pedal, it takes about 2.5 hours to charge. Alright, so before we get started, let's take a look at why you need a power supply in the first place. When pedals first showed up on the scene, your choice was to either plug them into the wall or use a battery. Then they invented mini pedals, and a lot of those don't even have room for batteries, and that's where the power supply comes in. So look, if every pedal you have has its own power cord, pretty soon your power strip's going to get really full. Your sockets are going to be a mess, and you're going to have cords everywhere to trip over. So if you get a power supply, you cut it down to one cord, or if you get a rechargeable power supply, now you don't have any cord. So the power supply we're looking at can handle 9 volt at 100 milliamps, 9 volt at 500 milliamps, plus there's a port for 9 volt, 12 volt, or 18 volt at 100 milliamps. That should cover most of the pedals that are being produced today. So this is where it gets a little technical. I'm going to rely on outside sources for this explanation, and I quote, "A power supply is essentially a series of separate power sources in one enclosure. Each supply stands on its own with no direct connection to any of the other supplies, and as such, the effects they power have no direct connection to any other through their respective power ports." That was from Barry O'Neill in Premium Guitar, April of 2020. The same article explains the difference between positive and negative ground leads. It's a little complicated. Suffice to say, I've put a link in the comments so you can do your homework on your own. You're welcome. The article also goes on to explain that one of the issues you might run across if you use a daisy chain is what they refer to as crosstalk, meaning the power use of this pedal is going to affect what's happening in this pedal. So if you have a real sputtery, fuzzy pedal over here and it's very erratic, that might affect the sound of this pedal here. Or maybe you're using a tremolo that goes boom, boom, boom. That's going to bleed over into your other pedals. If everybody's got their own independent power source, that eliminates that problem altogether. Power supplies also solve the problem of ground loops. An isolated power supply should eliminate ground loops and any associated hum, as there is no grounding path between the two pedals. I'm going to give you one last quote on ground loops, and it's kind of a long one. "The last reason for isolation we'll list here is ground loops. In general, for guitar rigs, it's best practice to have just one ground path. Typically, that one path should be the ground connections of all your patch cables extending in a line from the guitar's output to the amp's input. Daisy chaining power creates other ground paths that make closed loops from one section of your signal flow to another. These ground loops can make your rig more susceptible to hum pickup in the presence of electromagnetic fields. If you have daisy-chained pedals both in front of an amp and in the effects loop and dozens of feet of cable between them, the associated ground loops can become very large and produce a great deal of noise. Using an isolated supply disconnects the links that make the loop, and the induced hum can no longer be sustained." Okay, so that's why you should get a power supply. And the reason you should get a rechargeable power supply is now you don't have to plug it into anything. Me personally, I've been to open mics where you can bring a couple of pedals and you can plug your electric guitar directly into their PA system, or you can go through a couple pedals, but If you have to plug in your pedals, now you have to fuddle around for a power strip or whatever. It's just kind of hinky and a pain in the butt. But with this, you don't need to find a power source. You can just, it'll light up your pedal board, plug it into the rechargeable power source, go directly into their board. Now you've got all your tone right there with you, and you don't have to waste any time looking for a power strip. It's great. Now I realize the big question here is how long is this thing going to run, right? So I decided to do a test. I set up a reasonable pedal board. It's nothing too huge, but it's reasonable. It covers most of your bases. Now, keep in mind, if you're the Edge, you might get different results than this, but I think this should give you a basic idea of what you can expect from this. I do also want to say this is the first time I've ran this battery all the way down, and it is brand new. So next year, I don't know if you're still going to get the amount of time I got this year, but let's see how it holds up. 8.5 hours. That is not too shabby, okay? And I was running, like I said, a pretty fair amount of stuff out of that board, and that was non-stop use for 8.5 hours. One of the things I like too, even when it switches to yellow, I still had a lot of time left before I ran out of juice, and there was a couple of hours on red too. So it definitely lets you know where you stand. Another thing I noticed, it doesn't fizzle out. It's just full power and then gone, right? There's no like, bleh, period. It's just full rockin', no more rockin'. So that's the Joyo Power Supply 5. I hope you liked this episode. If you did, please subscribe, please like, please share. If you want to follow me on Instagram, that's the address. My name is Spencer Dobson. I hope you're doing okay. I hope you're taking care of yourself. Thank you for watching Learning Curve. We'll see you next time.